Hello, hello, y'all. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm checking, trying to make sure we aren't glitchy over here, like my son says, right? All right. Yeah, so thank y'all. Hey, hey, Holistic Hedge, right? I hope that May has been treating everybody very well. Lots of happenings so far this month. Teacher appreciation, teacher of the year announcements, graduations, lots of sprinkles, prom things. You all, right? Especially depending where in the country you are, you might still be waiting for a prom situation. All right, but I've really been enjoying some of the pictures and videos, and definitely some interesting dialogue has come out of those things, I'll say. But if this is your first time joining, welcome, welcome. Y'all, in this space, we build relational capacity and emotional agility. We really want everybody to be smooth with it. Out here, we want a community of relational ninjas, just straight up socially and emotionally intelligent martial artists, right? That's what we want. That's the goal. So, this particular, what I want to say, this particular live came about because we have an email campaign that's running right now that's connecting social emotional learning, social emotional intelligence, right? It's connecting it to your favorite movies. So definitely that intrapersonal and intrapersonal work. So it started last week, and clearly the first one we emphasized was Mean Girls. So we're connecting it, and I'm gonna say a little bit. I'm definitely elaborating because we didn't say all this right in the email. But as always, y'all, we want to make sure that we express our gratitude for this time and this space. And if you're catching the replay, don't forget to put hashtag replay in the comments to touch base and just let us know that you're listening. All right. In 2023, we're executing with intention and the spirit of synergy. Well, here we go. You all. So, the title for today, when we talk about today's title, oh, give me just a moment. As I'm trying to make sure things aren't glitchy. There we go. So, when we talk about today's title, maximizing SEI, so social emotional intelligence, what we learned from Mean Girls, y'all listen. I need y'all to feel the theme though. I need y'all to understand that it is also Wednesday, and we wore pink, right? If you know, you know, for sure. So first, before we take a deep dive into the connection, let me say this: within the past business week, yes, just 5 days, right? Within this past business week, I've had a few conversations about this unfortunate and frankly, just really out of order, the parallels between some behaviors that we might expect from adolescents, right? And many leaders. And when I say leaders, remember that anyone is a leader in any given space. So using that term loosely, more broadly, but some of the behaviors that are showing up these days, again, out of order, out of order. Y'all, in all of these spaces, whether we're talking about, and in my conversation with someone who worked in corporate, someone else worked in and referred to a social organization that they're a part of, and then yet someone else talked about at the schoolhouse. But what did all the conversations have in common? What did all of the demonstrations have in common? Really, people that were not demonstrating and not prioritizing their social emotional intelligence. That was the heart of the matter. But instead, in all these spaces, right, again, in any given space, people were demonstrating many toxic behaviors. And I'll be honest, I really almost didn't use that word because toxicity is thrown around so much these days. But based on this conversation, I feel that it's the best fit. So, really quickly, y'all, during our last live, we gave some stats and focused on the top 10 toxic behaviors that are prevailing in spaces. And again, moving forward, we're just going to say collaborative spaces because we said workspaces, but again, in a conversation with someone about a social organization they had, someone talked about some things at home. We're just going to say in collaborative spaces moving forward. So, before we get into some of the behaviors, if you feel comfortable sharing, if you want to comment and say more, please do. You're welcomed and encouraged to do so. So, and if at any point any of this resonates with you, please, please, if it hits you a bit differently, let us know by dropping a building emoji. All right. So, a building of your choice. It can be a house, a post office, a school, a hospital, really whatever you like. Whatever you like. Because again, these toxic demonstrations, they can show up anywhere. They show up anywhere, frankly. So, most frequently, right, these are the most common behaviors. These are the top offenders, I'll say. So we're not going through all 10, but just a few, right? We have some sibling sets, I'll call them the siblings. So the first set, so bullying and discrimination often go hand in hand. So when we talk about bullying, we know that that's the intimidating or harassing fellow collaborators, right, regardless of their position in the organization. It can be belittling them or undermining their work, their contribution, and trying to use some type of power or authority to manipulate the situation. So discrimination, one could even say, is definitely right a sibling to bullying, but it's where, yes, the collaborators, right, because anyone in their space, whether they're a superior or someone that reports to someone, or maybe even peers, right? So treating a collaborator differently and unfairly because of race, gender, age, sexual orientation, or this host of other personal characteristics, a lot of different things, a lot of different reasons. So between these sibling pairs, between bullying and discrimination, I also feel like we should include this particular little sibling, I'll say. A lot of times people, almost true to its nature, people forget about the impact, or they downplay, I'll say, the impact that this particular thing has on collaborative spaces, and that's passive aggressiveness, y'all. So almost just as slick, right, as when people are moving with passive aggression, just almost just as a slick manner. This is when people are indirectly expressing negative feelings or resentment towards their fellow collaborators. So that can be sarcasm, gossip, or the undermining of others. So that's not to be just gently looked over and glossed over, because it makes a very big impact. It has a very big deal, right? It undermines itself, the culture of an organization. So wanted to sprinkle that one in, because that's definitely a younger sibling, in my opinion, right, to the bullying and discrimination. So another sibling set, harassment and micromanagement. When we talk about harassment, a lot of times people shift immediately to a sexual harassment, right? But it's technically anything that can create a hostile environment. So that is why we paired it with micromanagement. So micromanagement is that controlling and scrutinizing every aspect of a collaborator's work, right? Someone in that space that you should be collaborating with. We're all working towards this goal. Maybe you're scrutinizing the work, which can lead to stress, anxiety, and actually decreases productivity. And so I know last time when we talked about micromanagement, really quickly, we also mentioned that more likely people that are like millennials, Gen Y, Gen X, and up, they're very likely to cite micromanagement as an issue for them, because remember, these were a lot of the people that they stayed home maybe by themselves as young people. And so they were trusted. They feel like they were trusted as or in their youth. So why is there so much scrutiny, so much question now that I'm grown, now that I'm an adult? So that's where some of that previous, right, the prior experience comes into play. And again, yeah, we still have a cousin. We have a little cousin for both micromanagement and harassment, and then discrimination and bullying. And the little cousin to everybody is favoritism. So where certain collaborators are treated better than others because maybe you're scrutinizing someone's work and want to know every single detail, but not the other. Maybe there's some type of harassment, some type of manipulation, and a bit of a power struggle, but not others. So again, these are the top. These are the most common types of toxic behaviors, right? I said that word is overused. I hate to use it, but the most common types of toxic behaviors. But y'all, guess what they all have in common? Whether they're the big sibling, little cousin, they're all centered on communication. And I think for a lot of people that's a miss sometimes, right? It's all centered on communication. So what we can say about communication, we continue to say about communication in any space, is in these collaborative spaces, let me slow down. Y'all know I get excited. I start talking quickly. That communication can, will, and does break down culture. It's very real. It's very real. So that's not to be, again, ignored, or, oh, we don't have to focus on that, because it will shut it down. It sure will. So those things that we mentioned, y'all, they can be described as styles of toxic communication. A lot of times people like to say, well, what's your communication style? That's kind of a thing as people are working on and building their social emotional intelligence. So we're talking about and we're naming some of the toxic communication styles, right? So a lot of times it's anything that is negative, aggressive, or just disrespectful communication with your fellow collaborators. And again, we're using collaborators because people have different spaces that they function in. But in any given space, we're working towards a common goal. So they're still your collaborators. So when we talk about toxic communication, I'm sure a lot of people immediately, the default is to think about the over the top things where, right, maybe someone is yelling, someone's interrupting you when you're trying to speak. Maybe there's a blame game happening. Maybe there's some physicality, right? I mean, it happens. We've seen it. Okay. So people think about those over the top moments, but y'all heard the list before: the bullying, discrimination, harassment, micromanagement, favoritism. Those things are also forms, also demonstrations of toxic communication. All right. So again, buildings, anybody? Remember, drop a building emoji of your choice if something resonates. Again, any building emoji, because any of these behaviors, any of these demonstrations can take place anywhere. Y'all, many people try to compartmentalize, right? Anything. If there was something, something that's not quite right. But the reality is, I'm telling y'all about these conversations I've had in these past few days, right? Whether it was a social organization, at home, or at work, y'all, it's loud. So people think they're containing and compartmentalizing, but it's very loud, it's glaring, and it's obvious, right? And how you're interacting with and treating people. It's very obvious with how you're interacting with and treating other people. So many people are embodying too many of these elements from that list. I'm not going to keep going down the list, but they're embodying too many elements of that list. And there are some unresolved aspects. And it can be unresolved aspects from childhood, from home life, right? And all those things are showing up and bleeding all over the place. So just throwing out a few scenarios, because there's a lot of different factors, right? They go into how people show up on any given day in certain types of conversations, right? But just throwing out a couple of things to consider. So let's say that from childhood, maybe there was some enabling, some entitlement, and a trauma response. And those things, all three of them, a couple of them, one of them has gone unchecked. And now in adulthood, y'all, when you're in a disagreement, right? If you've experienced those things, it's gone unchecked. When you're in a disagreement, it'll feel, if someone disagrees, rather, not just a general disagreement, but if someone disagrees with an idea or a concept that you have, it feels personal. And communication may not be as effective as it could be because feedback wasn't a thing, right? It wasn't consistent if there was any feedback given at all. So this is where defensiveness, retaliation, intimidation, etc., that's where those things enter the chat, because other things went unchecked. And then maybe there's generally just excuses and passes given for overall communication toxicity. So when you have certain responses, certain behaviors, but people say, okay, well, right? And it's based on previous experiences. But again, we have to talk about these, and we have to think about that. That's showing up when we show up, right? So those people, right? Maybe in the past they saw it coming, just like those around you now, they see it coming and they know and can kind of call your behaviors in response to various situations. Definitely. So we talked about maybe some factors, perhaps for childhood. Here's another, perhaps maybe from home life. And these were super specific, I'll say, from some of the conversations I've had this week. So home life is holding up a mirror for sure, right? Maybe childhood can kind of smooth past a little bit, maybe not, depending on your role in the different organizations and these different collaborative spaces. But home life holds up a mirror, right? I call them mirrors and echoes because what people show us and what they allow us to hear, y'all, are really feedback. It's really feedback on where they are, including what they are experiencing right now. It's feedback on what they need, and it's feedback on what they've learned or been taught directly or indirectly, right? Especially once you reach adulthood. So maybe in their home life, respect is minimal and passive aggression is the norm, verbal assault is a mainstay. So, guess what happens in the collaborative spaces? People bring all of that and let all that loose in the organization. So, that's what's impacting your culture. So again, y'all, that's why we have to take this time. You must take this time to develop your social emotional intelligence and be about this work, because the reality is, who will want to be a part of that, or who will want to take part in a culture where they spend significant amounts of time dealing with that, right? That literally impacts people's quality of life. So who would sign up for that? Who? All right. So what does Mean Girls have to do with all of this? What did we glean? What can we take from this? Y'all, throughout the movie, there's really like an undercurrent of counterfeit connections. So y'all know, a little background if you don't know, Mean Girls, right, is definitely based and set in high school. So think TV style high school. Someone's jumping from one friend circle to another. There's some disloyalty. There's some treachery. All the drama that can be high school realistically, but TV, small screen, big screen, they hype it up some. But the heart of the matter is there were some counterfeit connections. And I'm going to extend it a bit to say this, that there were some counterfeit connections with self, just as in real life and day to day, people can have counterfeit connections with themselves, right? You can have a counterfeit connection with yourself. So you're releasing all of these shenanigans and all these things from that list out into the world and into your collaborative spaces, because there's a disconnect, right? There's a disconnect from what you imagine yourself to be, how you think of yourself, how you think others perceive you, but the reality is absolutely different. So again, if a lot of, like the drama surrounding Mean Girls, again, is based off counterfeit connections, we're first, this intrapersonal work and interpersonal work, making sure that we don't have a counterfeit connection with ourselves, right? So one character from Mean Girls even commented on how some people actively participated in the shenanigans. And it makes you pause. It's like, did people actively participate? But if you think about the movie, everyone participated, whether they actively participated or they stood by as the shenanigans proceeded, right? But everyone was affected. So in some way, everybody played a role. I'm gonna say it again. You either actively participated in the shenanigans or you stood by as it happened, even though everyone was affected. So again, we keep talking about this social emotional intelligence and how all these different layers impact culture in any organization, any collaborative space, we're saying. Again, right? We have to be super careful about that, because then my question becomes, so are we complicit? Are we idly complicit in how we demonstrate and how toxicity is being demonstrated? Or are we at a point that we're tired of being tired? And so we're ready to not only say something, but we're looking for active resolutions and active solutions. Are we at that point yet? Okay, so whether you're a high school student, a professional, or anyone in between, developing your social emotional intelligence can help you navigate these situations, right? These relationships and social dynamics much more effectively than trying to freestyle it. Y'all know how I told you freestyling is for the studio and for the pool. That's it. That's it. Right? When you're developing and working on your social emotional intelligence, you learn to manage your emotions, you learn to empathize with others. So, again, this deepens your connections, authentic connections, let me say. And you can resolve conflicts more constructively, and that'll lead to a more fulfilling life. And we talked a moment ago about that quality of life. A big thing, yeah, we say counterfeit connections. I'm gonna say it a different kind of way for being girls. Fake relationships, fake relationships. So regardless of your acting skills or sales abilities, I'll say phony interactions are ultimately identified, right? People know. People are gonna sniff you out. They know. And that's regardless of your age. Have you ever been around little kids? I mean, really little kids, and they'll kind of gravitate to one person, but the other person, they'll give them some side eye. hmm Instincts or something. I'll say that. Yeah, whatever layers make you who you are, be true to that. Whether it's a nerd, a creative, a gamer, or all of the above, embrace that. Because as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. Woo, excuse me. Yeah, a portion of authentic interactions, which again, that building piece of social emotional intelligence, means that we have to be honest about those not so great moments and exchanges. Again, if we're moving past these counterfeit connections, we want these authentic interactions, then we have to reflect, because these counterfeit connections, whether again it's yourself, you're perceiving yourself in a certain kind of way, but it's not reality, right? Or if it's your counterfeit connection with others, right? You're thinking, oh, okay, well, yeah, that didn't go so badly, or they'll be all right. Y'all, it's wreaking havoc on the culture. It's wreaking havoc, right? We have to be sure to spend some time reflecting on, again, those not so good and great moments and exchanges. So we have to reflect on them not only independently, but also collaboratively. And so, depending on your space, right? Someone will talk to you about it, someone will collaborate with you on it a little sooner than later. But we have to make sure that we capitalize on those opportunities to be able to choose differently, right? One thing we know, that especially when things don't go well, guess what? You're going to have a lot more opportunities, interactions in similar situations, I'll say. So you'll get another shot to give it a go. But the power comes in, what did you learn to do? How did you think through making sure the next time has a different outcome, right? So it can be a better future to better situate the organizational culture. Y'all, it really boils down to showing up fully human, not your attempt at a superhero or whatever other facade you create. You have to show up. So, so that I'll say, so that the inconsistencies in who you are over here versus your representatives won't show up. I'm gonna say that again, right? Because if you're trying to show up as not fully human, you have your superhero, your capes blowing in the wind, and you maybe have these other facades, these other representations of yourself that you've created or you're wanting to operate on because of some expectation. The inconsistencies are going to show up quickly, and that is going to undermine, again, the organizational culture. So if this is a part of, if being in touch with those authentic relationships, if being being opposites, right, being counterfeit connections means that you have to spend some time developing your social emotional intelligence, I have a few suggestions for you. So first, practicing mindfulness, right? Mindfulness involves really just being present and aware of your thoughts and feelings, right? Literally, some people try to check out of that in certain collaborative spaces. They don't allow themselves to think, to feel, right? So that's a whole nother thing, right? Y'all, by practicing mindfulness, you can learn to recognize right? Your emotions, you can learn to regulate your emotions, and you'll also learn and recognize the patterns in your emotions much more effectively, much more effectively. So the second thing you can do is learn to empathize. So empathy is a big deal. Sometimes people get empathy and sympathy, I'll say confused, but the basis is sympathy is yes, you felt something, right? If you thought about someone else's situation, you thought about something from a different perspective, but empathy moves you to action and it propels you to want to do something about that, to show up, to support in a different kind of way. So if sympathy is just, oh, that's not cool, right? Empathy is, oh, yeah, that's not cool. Let's figure out what we can do. It becomes that problem solving mode, or what can we do to support actual actions. So you gain a better understanding of someone else's emotions and their motivations the more you're able to practice empathy and the more you're able to empathize. And I want to pause and say this for empathy. A lot of times in, well, really any collaborative space, but really commonly in workspaces, I'll have a lot of, team leads, managers, maybe principals talking about the difficulty in motivating their staff, or the difficulty in, finding what works for them. But that, to me, it's an empathy thing. It's an empathy thing because the more you get to know someone, you understand and learn their perspective. So it's not so hard. It's not such a puzzle to track their motivations, to see what impacts what for them. Okay, so that's normally an empathy thing where often the person seeking to support has to dig a bit deeper for that, a bit deeper. The third thing, y'all, then we're about to get out of here, is building again those positive relationships. And I'm always going to say it: intrapersonal self and then interpersonal with others. So building those positive relationships so that you can focus on trust in the organization, mutual respect in the organization, and open communication. And when we say open communication styles, we're not talking about those toxic communication styles from earlier, right? We're not talking about those. So, again, y'all, to just kind of wrap up, going back to even a quote from the movie, right? Janice said that there's two types of evil people in this world: those who do evil things and those who see the evil being done but don't stop it. So again, are we at the point? Are we at the point where we're ready to do something about it by investing in not just our own social emotional intelligence, developing it, but also supporting others as they do so as well, right? Yeah, please make sure that you're on our email list so you can receive the connections between social emotional intelligence and some of our cinema favorites that are coming up. So please visit the link in the bio and look at the 5 reasons resource. All right. If you want to further the conversation, to begin that shift in your collaborative space, please do reach out to us. Reach out, because this is our jam and we're really committed to this work. And we hope that every time we have a conversation, that someone is provoked and propelled to do something different, right? To act on it, to move past insight to action. Y'all, please make sure to do all of the things on here. Please like, follow, save, comment, share, repost, all these things. I thank and appreciate each of you all sincerely. Thank you for taking some time, taking a moment to spend with us. We're really appreciative, seriously, of you tuning in. Thank you for your engagement. And remember that in the Holistic Hedge, we provide support and value while striving to be social, emotional, and relational ninjas. Y'all, thank y'all for joining. See you again soon. Bye-bye.